Welcome to the Playing Books podcast. Right now, inside your body, there are roughly 60,000 miles of blood vessels intricately woven together.
Yeah, which is just a staggering number.
Yeah.
I mean, that is enough biological tubing to literally wrap around the Earth twice over.
Twice. And, the crazy part is that with every single bite of food you take today, you are sending a direct chemical signal to that massive highway system.
Right. You're either sending a signal to feed a hidden disease, or you're actively sending a signal to starve it.
Exactly. It's this incredible amount of power sitting right there at the end of our forks. But it's like the one thing we almost never talk about in a clinical setting.
No, we really don't.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're unpacking in this episode. Because normally when we think about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of mechanical precision, right?
Yeah, like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points to it and says, there it is. It's totally binary, broken or not broken.
Exactly. And we crave that. I mean, we really like things to be visible and perfectly categorized. It gives us this false sense of control over the chaotic nature of biology.
But then you step into the doctor's office for something more insidious, like maybe you or a family member has just received a really frightening diagnosis.
Right, something like heart disease or diabetes or even cancer.
Yeah. And you sit there on that crinkly paper, and the doctor gives you the statistics, they hand you the standard pharmaceutical treatment plan,
And as you're walking out the door, reeling from the news, you turn around and ask, "Hey, doc, what can I eat to help myself?"
And what do you usually get? You get a blank stare. Or maybe this sort of dismissive, just eat a balanced diet. It is a profoundly helpless feeling for a patient.
It really is. But, it's important to clarify that the blank stare isn't malice on the part of the doctor. It's actually a systemic gap in our medical training.
Right, because physicians are armed to the teeth with knowledge about pharmacology and surgical interventions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the molecular tools of nutrition, those are, they're often completely absent from their toolkits.
And erasing that blank stare is the entire mission of this episode. We are going to completely rethink what it actually means to be healthy.
We're shifting away from this purely reactive approach.
Yeah, where we just sit around assuming we're fine, waiting to get sick so we can treat the sickness. We are moving toward a proactive cellular strategy.
Right, learning how to fortify the body's natural defenses using the actual chemistry of the food on our plates.
And our guide for this entire paradigm shift is this book, Eat to Beat Disease: The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself by William W. Lai, MD.
And it is so crucial to understand who we are learning from here because, let's be honest, the landscape of dietary advice is notoriously filled with snake oil.
Oh, absolutely. But Dr. Lai is not peddling alternative medicine or, fringe dietary fads.
Not at all. He is a highly respected internal medicine physician and a research scientist. His background is deeply rooted in molecular and cellular biology.
I mean, for 25 years, he's run the Angiogenesis Foundation. He works alongside the brightest minds from the NIH, the FDA, and global medical societies.
So the concepts we are exploring today in this podcast are grounded in cutting-edge, peer-reviewed, evidence-based science.
Which I think is the most important disclaimer we can make right off the bat. This isn't about replacing your doctor.
Right. It's about amplifying what your body can already do.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lee's whole philosophy in the book kind of flips traditional medical research on its head.
Yeah, because usually medical research looks for the individuality of a disease, right? They want to know what makes lung cancer different from breast cancer.
Or what makes Alzheimer's different from diabetes, so they can engineer a magic bullet for that one specific mechanism.
Exactly. The traditional model is highly siloed. You have cardiologists exclusively looking at the heart, oncologists exclusively looking at tumors,
And neurologists exclusively looking at the brain. And while that intense specialization has given us incredible localized treatments, it often misses the forest for the trees.
But what Dr. Lee did was step back. He spent his career looking for the common denominators of disease.
He asked this brilliant question: what do cancer, blindness, and diabetic complications all share at a cellular level?
Because if we can find the shared threads, we can achieve breakthroughs that don't just treat one illness, but fundamentally protect against multiple illnesses simultaneously.
Which really forces us to redefine health itself.
Totally. I mean, if I asked 100 people on the street to define health, 99 of them would probably say, it's the absence of disease.
Right, and I've been guilty of that too.
We all have. We currently treat our health like a parked car in the driveway. We assume the car is fine, we ignore it completely, and we only pay attention when the check engine light suddenly flashes red on the dashboard.
But health is not a parked car. Health is an active, dynamic, violently busy state.
That parked car analogy perfectly captures society's illusion of wellness. We assume that if we don't have a diagnosed illness, we are existing in a baseline of perfect stasis.
But at a cellular level, your body is in a state of constant, furious war. You are being bombarded by environmental toxins, UV radiation, stress hormones, mutating cells.
Just every single second of your life. So instead of a parked car, this book, Eat to Beat Disease, The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself by William W. Lai, MD, uses this incredible analogy that I want everyone listening to visualize right now.
It's the medieval fortress analogy, right?
Yes. Imagine your body as a medieval fortress. Now, when you look at a medieval castle from the outside, you just see the big passive stone walls.
Right, it looks totally static.
But if you actually try to invade that castle, you realize it's rigged with all these hidden active defenses. You hit the talus, which is this sloped stone wall at the base that prevents scaling ladders from finding a grip.
And if you somehow get past that, you fall into the tread loop.
Yeah, there's completely hidden pits with sharpened wooden spikes at the bottom.
And if you somehow survive that and make it to the gatehouse, suddenly murder holes open up in the ceiling above you and boiling oil pours down.
Exactly. These defenses are completely invisible until the enemy strikes. And your body works exactly the same way.
It's a brilliant framework because those hidden defenses in the human fortress are the only reason we survive that daily bombardment.
And the human body has 5 specific health defense systems that are hardwired within us. They protect us from disease, and crucially, they heal us from within when the walls are actually breached.
And these 5 systems are angiogenesis, regeneration, the microbiome, DNA protection, and immunity.
And the central thesis of the book is this massive revelation that doing something for each of these 5 systems every single day is the ultimate key to lifelong health.
We aren't waiting for the breach. We are reinforcing the gates.
Exactly. So let's march right up to the front of our body's fortress and look at defense system number 1, angiogenesis.
So angiogenesis it comes from the Greek angio, meaning vessel, and genesis, meaning creation. It's the process our bodies use to grow and maintain blood vessels.
Like we mentioned earlier, the 60,000 miles of blood vessels coursing through us. This massive, intricate highway system is responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to every single cell and organ you possess.
Right, and without it, tissue dies. But it's not a static highway. It's more like a highly sensitive thermostat. It needs to be perfectly balanced.
Because if you get a deep cut chopping vegetables or you have a diabetic leg ulcer, your body naturally sparks new blood vessels to grow.
It essentially builds a temporary detour highway to bring the rescue team, the white blood cells and nutrients, to heal the damaged tissue.
And then once the tissue is healed, the body releases natural inhibitors that just prune those extra vessels back down.
Precisely. The body maintains a state of homeostasis, a perfect balance.
Yeah.
But the dark side of angiogenesis emerges when that thermostat breaks.
Right. What happens if the system grows too many vessels in the wrong place and forgets how to prune them back?
That's how deadly diseases take root. A tumor, for example, starts out as a tiny cluster of mutated cells, maybe the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen.
But at that size, it lacks its own blood supply, right? It can't grow because it's basically starving.
Right. And here is where the biology gets really fascinating and honestly a little terrifying. Tumors are insidious. To survive, they start secreting chemical signals.
The most famous being VEGF, or vascular endothelial growth factor.
Yes. You can think of VEGF as a biological distress flare. It trickles out of the tumor, reaches a nearby healthy blood vessel, and tricks that vessel into sprouting new branches that grow directly toward the tumor.
Oh, wow. So once a tumor secures its own private blood supply, it can just extract all the oxygen and nutrients it wants.
Exactly. It grows exponentially, and eventually it uses those same blood vessels as an escape route to metastasize or spread to other parts of the body.
It literally hijacks the supply lines. And the exact same broken thermostat causes other diseases too, like macular degeneration, where abnormal blood vessels grow in the back of the eye, leak fluid, and destroy your vision.
So obviously medical science figured out how to manipulate this. We developed anti-angiogenic drugs to block those VEGF distress flares.
Literally starving cancers to death by cutting off their blood supply. It's brilliant. But this episode isn't about pharmaceuticals.
No, it's not. The groundbreaking part of Dr. Lee's research in this book, Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself by William W. Lai, MD, is his list of foods that influence this exact same biological mechanism.
And that's the paradigm shift. We now have concrete evidence that certain foods contain natural bioactive compounds.
Right, chemicals produced by plants to protect themselves that interact with our cellular receptors in the exact same way these high-tech drugs do.
So let's talk about those foods. When we need to stimulate angiogenesis to heal a wound, we are talking about things you probably have in your kitchen right now.
Things like apple peel, apples, barley, dried blueberries, chia seeds, chili peppers, flaxseed.
Ginseng, peppermint, pumpkin seeds, rosemary, sunflower seeds. The diversity there is amazing.
It is. But let's look at the actual mechanism. You mentioned apple peels. Apple peels contain a compound called ursolic acid.
Okay, ursolic acid.
Right, and when you consume it, ursolic acid essentially tells your endothelial cells, the cells that line your blood vessels, to divide and migrate toward areas of injury, sparking new vessel growth.
Wow, so it's not magic, it's just biochemistry.
Exactly.
Okay, so we can stimulate growth to heal, but what about blocking it? What about starving the tumors?
This leads us to the absolute jaw-dropping moment in Dr. Lee's book, the Vatican study he presented at the Unite to Cure conference.
Yes. He put this exact mechanism to the test, and the results fundamentally challenge how we view our diet.
This study is a cornerstone for why the food is medicine movement is gaining such immense scientific credibility. Dr. Lee and his team did a head-to-head comparison in the laboratory.
They took standard pharmaceutical drugs, 4 different cancer drugs, plus statins and anti-inflammatories, and they pitted them directly against ordinary dietary factors from foods, right?
Yes. They wanted to see which compounds were better at anti-angiogenesis, meaning which ones were best at shutting down those VEGF distress flares and starving diseased blood vessels.
And the results were staggering. They tested 16 dietary factors against these heavy-hitting drugs. 15 out of the 16 dietary factors were more potent at stopping blood vessel growth than one of the leading cancer drugs tested.
It is genuinely remarkable. I mean, we are talking about common foods holding their own against chemotherapy agents.
Yeah, he lists dietary extracts from tea, turmeric, vitamin E, lavender, citrus, red grapes, and garlic.
And they were going toe-to-toe with serious drugs like tamoxifen and paclitaxel. When we look at something like green tea, it's packed with a polyphenol called EGCG.
And EGCG literally binds to the VEGF receptors on our cells, physically blocking the tumor's distress flares from connecting. It unplugs the phone line.
It really does. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second, because if I just read that headline, I might think, great, I'll throw away my prescriptions and just eat garlic and drink green tea.
And that is a very dangerous trap, which Dr. Lee is incredibly careful to avoid in the book. We must be scientifically accurate.
He explicitly states that a laboratory result in a petri dish or an animal model does not equate perfectly to how a food will act inside the complex ecosystem of a living human body.
Right. You cannot just swap out a prescribed chemotherapy regimen for a bowl of red grapes. A drug is an isolated, concentrated, massive dose of a single compound designed to carpet bomb a problem.
Exactly. Food is more like a symphony of thousands of compounds working subtly over time.
But what this data unequivocally proves is the profound molecular power Mother Nature has laced into our food. We have radically underestimated the preventative and supportive capability of what we eat.
It's about giving your body the absolute best fighting chance before disease takes hold and supporting it during treatment.
It's giving your fortress the absolute best building materials, which brings us right to defense system number 2, regeneration.
Right, because for a long time the dogma was that humans just don't regenerate. Starfish can regrow an arm, salamanders regrow tails, but humans.
We basically reach our mid-20s peak and then slowly degenerate until we die. That's what I was always taught.
But that's entirely false. We have an internal repair system powered by stem cells.
The idea that we are just slowly deteriorating machines is an outdated artifact of 20th century biology.
You have approximately 750,000 stem cells distributed throughout your bone marrow, your lungs, your liver, and almost all your organs.
Think of them as a highly trained, specialized emergency repair crew. So how does the repair crew actually know where to go?
It's a chemical homing system. When an organ is damaged, whether from an acute illness, a physical trauma, or just the daily oxidative wear and tear of aging, the damaged tissue releases a chemical distress signal into the bloodstream.
Okay, another signal. What is it called?
It's a protein called SDF1. The stem cells in your bone marrow detect this SDF1 gradient, and they mobilize.
They literally detach from the marrow, enter the bloodstream, follow the chemical trail directly to the site of the damage, and then they morph into whatever cell type is needed to regenerate that specific tissue.
They are blank slates that can become heart cells, lung cells, skin cells.
And what absolutely fascinates me in this book, Eat to Beat Disease, The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself, by William W. Lai, MD, are the specific foods that can mobilize this repair crew.
Because if I ask the average person to name a food that promotes cellular healing, they'd probably guess a leafy green, like spinach.
Yeah, exactly. But the foods Dr. Lai highlights for mobilizing stem cells include dark chocolate, black tea, and beer. I feel like I really need to push back here. Beer. How on earth is alcohol, a known toxin, mobilizing my stem cells?
It sounds completely counterintuitive, I know. Yeah. And to be clear, the alcohol itself is not the beneficial agent here. We're looking at specific bioactive compounds within the ingredients used to make the beer.
Okay, so like the hops.
Yes.
Yes.
Specifically, the hops and the barley contain compounds like xanthohumol. In laboratory studies, these specific polyphenols have been shown to interact with the stem cell niches in our bone marrow.
Prompting them to release more stem cells into our peripheral blood? That is wild.
It is. And similarly, the flavonols in dark chocolate increase the number of circulating stem cells significantly.
Okay, but if dark chocolate and beer pump out more stem cells, couldn't that backfire? Like if I have a hidden microscopic tumor growing inside me, wouldn't I accidentally be giving that tumor fresh stem cells to use for its own growth? Because cancer uses stem cells too, right?
That is an excellent, highly critical question. Yes, cancer stem cells exist, and they are the deadly seeds of a tumor.
Right.
Standard chemotherapy often kills the bulk of the rapidly dividing tumor cells, but it frequently fails to kill the cancer stem cells because they mutate and hide.
And if those cancer stem cells survive, the disease will inevitably return.
Exactly. However, the bioactives in these foods are remarkably selective. They don't just dump raw materials into the blood, they influence gene expression.
They modulate the system.
Right. And more importantly, food can act as a targeted assassin against those specific deadly cancer stem cells. The book highlights purple potatoes, for instance.
Purple potatoes.
Yes. They contain a pigment called anthocyanin. Research shows that this specific compound has the ability to seek out and induce apoptosis-programmed cell death, specifically in cancer stem cells, while leaving our healthy, regenerative stem cells completely unharmed.
A purple potato taking out cancer stem cells. It sounds like a sci-fi novel, but it's sitting right there in the produce aisle. It's incredible.
It really is.
So we've secured our supply lines with angiogenesis. We've empowered our repair crews with regeneration. Let's move to defense system number 3, which is arguably the buzziest topic in modern medicine right now, the microbiome.
The microbiome fundamentally changes how we view ourselves as a species. You are not just a human. You are essentially a superorganism.
Because you have roughly 39 trillion bacteria living inside you, primarily residing in your large intestine.
To put that in perspective, bacterial cells actually outnumber your human cells.
Which is mind-blowing. But for decades, the medical establishment viewed bacteria almost exclusively as the enemy pathogens to be eradicated with broad-spectrum antibiotics.
But we now understand that this vast population of microbes is intimately involved in almost every physiological process we have.
But it's a fragile ecosystem, isn't it? Dr. Lai talks about the state called dysbiosis.
Right. That's when the bad bacteria overrun the good bacteria, or when the sheer diversity of your microbiome crashes, usually because of poor diet or antibiotic overuse.
And the list of conditions the book links to dysbiosis is terrifying. We aren't just talking about getting a stomach ache or some bloating.
No, he links a disrupted microbiome to Alzheimer's, asthma, autism, bipolar disorder, breast cancer, celiac disease, depression, diabetes, and irritable bowel syndrome.
I need you to break this down for me. How can the bacteria in my large intestine possibly affect my brain to cause depression or my lungs to cause asthma?
It all comes down to the communication network.
Yeah.
The gut is not just a passive digestion tube. It is literally the command center for your immune system.
Okay, how so?
If you look at the lining of your intestines, it is incredibly thin, just one single cell
Sure.
thick. On the inside of that lining, you have your 39 trillion bacteria.
Right.
Directly on the outside of that lining, right beneath the surface, you have a dense, jelly roll-like layer of immune tissue called the GOLT, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue.
So they are basically living right next door to each other.
More than that, they are constantly talking. Your gut bacteria secrete metabolites, chemical byproducts from digesting your food.
And these metabolites pass through that one-cell thick lining and interact directly with the immune cells in the GOLT.
Exactly. The bacteria are literally training your immune cells. They act like drill sergeants, telling the immune system what a harmless piece of food looks like, what an actual pathogen looks like, and how aggressively to respond.
So if your gut bacteria are wiped out or unbalanced, your immune system basically loses its instructors,
It either goes blind and misses threats, or it goes rogue and starts attacking everything.
which leads to inflammation and autoimmune issues all over the body, including the brain and the lungs.
Exactly. And the most profound life or death example of this bacterial communication comes from recent breakthroughs in cancer immunotherapy.
I remember reading the section in Eat to Beat Disease, The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself by William W. Lay, MD, and just stopping in my tracks. Immunotherapy is the treatment that uses the patient's own immune system to hunt down and attack cancer, right?
Yes. It's a revolutionary class of drugs. But oncologists noticed a deeply perplexing trend.
What was it?
The immunotherapy worked miraculously for some patients, literally melting tumors away. But for other patients with the exact same type of cancer, it completely failed. For a while, no one knew why.
And it turns out the defining factor was their microbiome.
Yes. Specifically, researchers found that certain gut bacteria, one of the most famous being Akkermansia muciniphala, act as crucial brokers for our immune response.
Let me use an analogy here to see if I have this right. The immunotherapy drug is like a highly advanced $1 million guided missile.
Okay, I like where this is going.
But the missile doesn't have its own targeting system. The beneficial gut bacteria, like the Akkermansia, act like the GPS satellites orbiting above, actively guiding the immune cells to the tumor.
That is a perfect analogy. If a patient had recently taken a round of antibiotics for a simple infection, it wiped out their gut bacteria. They destroyed their own GPS satellites.
Oh, wow. So when the doctors administered the immunotherapy missile, it just flew blind.
Couldn't find the cancer because the bacterial middleman was missing. Patients literally lost their chance at a cure because of their gut flora.
That shows how impossibly interconnected everything is. You cannot just treat the tumor. You have to treat the soil the tumor is growing in. You have to feed the Akkermansia.
Exactly. And the book details how foods like pomegranate, cranberries, and walnuts specifically feed those exact beneficial bacteria. It's not just about eating fiber. It's about targeted microbial feeding.
Which is a huge distinction. And that interconnectedness brings us seamlessly to defense systems 4 and 5. DNA protection and immunity.
Let's touch on DNA protection first, because I think most people view their DNA as this fixed, immutable blueprint locked away in a cellular vault.
Yeah, like whatever you were born with is what you get.
That's the common perception. But DNA is actually highly vulnerable, and it is actively being damaged and repaired tens of thousands of times a day.
And your DNA requires constant protection from 2 major threats: inflammation and oxidative damage.
Right. Oxidative damage. We hear the term antioxidants thrown around on every juice commercial, but what is oxidative damage, really?
Think of it like cellular rust. Normal metabolic processes, as well as exposure to sunlight, pollution, or junk food, create molecules called free radicals.
These are unstable molecules that are missing an electron. Because they are unstable, they tear through your cells, aggressively stealing electrons from whatever they bump into, including your DNA.
And when they steal from your DNA, it causes structural breaks and mutations.
And antioxidants from our food, like the vitamin C in a kiwi or the beta-carotene in carrots, are basically molecular philanthropists.
They step in and voluntarily donate an electron to the free radical, neutralizing it before it can rip apart our DNA.
That's exactly it. It's so elegant. Furthermore, at the very end of our DNA strands are structures called telomeres.
Right, they act like the little plastic tips on the ends of your shoelaces, preventing the DNA strands from unraveling and fraying every time a cell divides.
And as we age, those telomeres naturally shorten. But the research Dr. Lee highlights shows that certain foods and even lifestyle factors like stress reduction can activate an enzyme called telomerase.
Which actually rebuilds and lengthens those protective caps, functionally slowing down cellular aging.
Oysters, for example, are packed with zinc and proteins that specifically support DNA repair mechanisms.
It's incredible that we have the power to protect our source code, which leads right into the final and perhaps most complex defense system: immunity.
Yes, reading Dr. Lee's description of the immune system is like reading a Tom Clancy military thriller. The sheer firepower our bodies possess is staggering.
Let's break down the troops. First, we have the B cells.
The B cells are the intelligence and artillery division. Dr. Lee describes them as body surfing through your bloodstream, constantly on patrol.
And what they're looking for are antigens. You can think of an antigen as a pirate flag waving on the surface of an invading bacteria or virus. It's a molecular signature that says, I do not belong here.
And when a B cell spots one of those pirate flags, its response is nothing short of extraordinary. The B cell begins to clone itself and pump out antibodies specifically shaped to snag that exact invader.
And the rate of production is what blew my mind. The book says a single B cell can pump out 200 antibodies per second.
It's just massive.
I had to look this up to contextualize it.
Yeah.
That is twice the rate of fire of an M134 minigun. You know, that massive electric rotary machine gun you see mounted on military helicopters, 200 per second.
It is a staggering biological feat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end when the battle is over. Once the infection is cleared, a fraction of those B cells transform into memory B cells.
They memorize the exact molecular shape of that specific invader and go into hiding in your lymph nodes. They can wait there for decades.
If that exact same virus ever enters your body again, even 20 years later, those memory cells recognize it instantly and launch a massive preemptive artillery strike before you even feel a sniffle.
It's an elegant and brutal system, but the B cells don't act alone. We also have the T cells, which handle the hand-to-hand combat.
Yes, the T cells come in different highly specialized factions. You have the helper T cells, which are the commanders. They sound the chemical alarm and coordinate the attack of the other immune cells.
Then you have the cytotoxic T cells. The word cytotoxic literally means cell killing. These are the frontline assassins.
They directly engage infected cells or cancerous cells attached to them and inject lethal proteins that cause the disease cell to self-destruct.
And finally, crucially, you have the regulatory T cells, or TREGs.
The peacekeepers.
Right, and they might be the most important part of the whole operation.
Arguably, yes. The TREGs are responsible for calling off the attack once the threat is neutralized.
Because if your TREGs fail, your immune system doesn't stop. It remains locked in combat mode, and it turns its weapons on your own healthy tissues.
This failure of the TREGs is the underlying mechanism behind autoimmune diseases like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, celiac disease, and multiple sclerosis.
Okay, I have to ask a question that I think everyone listening to this podcast is secretly wondering about immunity.
Go for it.
When we get sick, when we have a terrible cold, our mothers and grandmothers always told us to eat chicken soup. I always assumed this was just a comforting placebo effect. You know, the steam clears your sinuses, the broth is warm and silty, you feel loved. But does Dr. Lay's research in Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself, by William W. Lai, MD, actually validate chicken soup on a cellular level?
It does. This is where ancient wisdom perfectly aligns with modern molecular biology. Laboratory tests have actually been conducted on chicken soup.
No way.
Yes. The research shows that chicken soup significantly inhibits neutrophil chemotaxis in vitro.
Okay, English please. What is neutrophil chemotaxis?
Neutrophils are a type of white blood cell that acts as a first responder to infection, and their primary weapon is creating inflammation. Chemotaxis is their movement toward the site of infection.
Oh, I see. So when you have a cold virus in your respiratory tract, neutrophils swarm the area, causing massive inflammation, which results in the swelling, the mucus production, the coughing, all the miserable symptoms.
Exactly. By inhibiting their movement, the compounds in the chicken soup effectively slow down the neutrophil swarm. It prevents them from overreacting. It is active biochemical suppression of upper respiratory inflammation.
I absolutely love when rigorous science proves grandma's right. And the book also mentions fasting in relation to immunity, which is fascinating because we usually think of health as what we put into our bodies, not what we withhold.
Right. It says that fasting can actually trigger the regeneration of an old, damaged immune system.
This is a remarkable discovery. When you undergo a prolonged fast, typically taking in only water for a specific period of days, your body realizes it is starving.
In an effort to conserve energy, it begins breaking down and recycling its own damaged, old, or malfunctioning immune cells. It essentially clears the board.
Then, when you break the fast and introduce nutrients again, the refeeding triggers your bone marrow stem cells to generate a brand new, highly functional, youthful fleet of immune cells.
It's like turning a glitchy computer off, wiping the hard drive, and installing a fresh operating system.
Which is critical because with immunity, we are always aiming for what Dr. Lai calls the Goldilocks zone. We want an immune system that is active and vigilant enough to wipe out a cancer cell or a flu virus instantly, but not so overactive that it ignores the TREGs and starts destroying our joints or our thyroid. It needs to be just right.
Balance is the underlying theme of the entire book.
So we thoroughly understand the 5 defenses: angiogenesis, regeneration, microbiome, DNA, and immunity. Now let's get to the fun part. The menu.
Ah, yes, the food itself.
Because traditionally, when you hear eating for health, you picture a plate of steamed, unseasoned broccoli, maybe a piece of dry boiled chicken, and a glass of tap water. The phrase implies punishment and deprivation.
But Dr. Lee guides us through some of the most surprising, luxurious gastronomic delights that are actually profoundly medicinal. Healthy eating does not mean you have to be miserable.
Far from it. The evidence points to a vibrant, culturally rich, and flavorful diet. Dr. Lee celebrates food. Let's look at the exceptional foods roster he presents in the book.
Oh, let's do it.
Number 1 on the luxury list, truffles. I'm talking about the real ones, the fungi found buried underground by pigs or specially trained dogs in the forests of Italy and France. Obviously, they are incredibly delicious, heavily prized by chefs, but what are they actually doing inside the human body?
Truffles are fascinating chemically. They contain a specific bioactive compound called anandamide.
Anandamide, okay.
Now, anandamide is a powerful immune booster, but it also functions as a neurotransmitter in the brain. What's incredible is that anandamide binds to and activates the exact same endocannabinoid reward centers in the brain as THC from cannabis.
Wait, truffles get you high.
Not exactly high in a psychoactive way, but it produces a natural, mild sense of euphoria and deep satisfaction. It's nature's way of rewarding you for eating something that simultaneously fortifies your immune defenses.
So you're fighting disease and feeling a wash of euphoria at the same time. I can definitely get behind that. Next up is something a bit more niche but highly prized in the Mediterranean, botarga.
For those who don't know, this is the salty, cured, dried, gray mullet roe, famously produced in Sardinia, usually grated over a simple pasta with garlic and oil, almost like a seafood Parmesan cheese.
Right, it's intensely savory, a total umami bomb. But beyond its culinary appeal, laboratory extracts from botarga have been shown to directly kill colon cancer cells.
It is an incredibly dense source of beneficial omega-3 fatty acids and highly unique bioactives that seem to specifically target and induce apoptosis in malignant cells within the digestive tract.
And sticking with that dark, briny Mediterranean seafood theme, what about squid ink? You see this in Spain's arroz negro, their famous black paella, or in Venice with risotto al nero di sepia.
It literally stains your mouth and teeth black while you eat it, but internally it's doing something miraculous.
What's the mechanism there?
Squid ink is a molecular triple threat. The research shows it is highly anti-angiogenic, meaning it effectively blocks VEGF and starves tumor blood vessels.
Okay. 1.
2, it protects our regenerative stem cells from oxidative damage. And 3, uniquely, the compounds in squid ink have been shown to act as a protective shield for the gut microbiome, specifically defending those delicate bacteria against the devastating wipeout effects of cancer chemotherapy.
Wow. For patients undergoing harsh treatments, incorporating foods like squid ink could offer a vital protective mechanism for their internal ecosystems.
It's basically armor for your gut bacteria.
Then we have razor clams. These are those long, rectangular clams that look like straight razors. When you cook them a la plancha with a little garlic and white wine, they pop open and the meat is incredibly sweet.
Lab studies on the extracts of razor clam meat show they dramatically increase antibody production from our B cells.
And remarkably, they can directly kill breast and liver cancer cells in a petri dish.
And we absolutely cannot discuss a disease-beating diet without discussing the cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, olive oil.
But Dr. Lee makes a vital, often overlooked distinction here in the book. Not all olive oils are created equal. You cannot just grab the cheapest massive plastic jug off the bottom shelf of the supermarket, pour it on your salad, and expect medicinal benefits.
Right, you have to flip the bottle around and play detective. He advises us to look for extra virgin olive oils that are specifically pressed from 3 types of olives. Cornacchia olives from Greece, Picul olives from Spain, or Moriolo olives from Italy.
Why does the specific olive matter so much?
Because the scientific analysis of the oil profile shows that these specific monovarietals contain the absolute highest concentrations of polyphenol bioactives, specifically compounds like hydroxytyrosol and oleuropein.
These are the chemical keys that deliver the potent antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and angiogenesis balancing effects.
If you buy a highly refined blended oil, those compounds have been processed right out of it. You're looking for molecular potency, and the genetics of the olive variety dictates the payload.
It's like choosing high-octane fuel for a high-performance engine.
Yeah.
And then there's a category of foods in the book that I absolutely love. Dr. Lai calls them the Grand Slammers.
If you think of this like a baseball diamond, you've got 5 bases: your 5 health defense systems. Most healthy foods might hit a single or a double. Maybe they support your microbiome and your immunity.
But the Grand Slammers are a rare class. They contain such a diverse, overlapping, and powerful array of bioactive compounds that they positively impact all 5 health defense systems simultaneously.
What's on that list?
Things like green tea, coffee, walnuts, extra virgin olive oil, and dark chocolate.
When you consume a Grand Slammer in one sitting, you are balancing your blood vessels, mobilizing your repair stem cells, feeding your gut bacteria, shielding your DNA from oxidative rust, and arming your B and T cells. It's a systemic upgrade.
Okay, so the science is fascinating, the foods sound delicious, but how do we actually implement this? Because the last thing anyone listening to this episode wants is to be handed another restrictive fad diet.
We all know the drill: never eat carbs again, or only eat cabbage soup for a month, or track every single macro. It's exhausting, it ruins your social life, and it inevitably fails.
How does Dr. Lee propose we put this incredible food chemistry to work in our daily chaotic lives?
This is where the practicality of his approach really shines, and why it's so sustainable. He introduces a concept called the 5 by 5 by 5 framework.
And the foundational revolutionary principle of this framework is preference, not deprivation.
I love this. I want to ask you to participate with us right now. As you are listening to this, whether you're commuting in traffic, walking the dog, or folding laundry, I want you to start mentally building your own preferred foods list, or PFL.
Grab a mental pen and paper. Think about the foods we've discussed today and hundreds more that are in the book. Do you like apples? Check. Olive oil? Check. Dark chocolate? Check. Walnuts? Sourdough bread? Coffee?
The premise is remarkably simple and liberating. You look at the lists and you choose 5 foods from your preferred foods. List foods you genuinely deeply enjoy eating that hit the 5 defense systems.
And your only job is to incorporate those 5 foods into your meals every single day. You're not forcing yourself to eat something you despise just because an article said it's a superfood.
You are empowering yourself by purposefully selecting the disease-fighting molecular tools that also bring you joy.
But we also have to talk about dosage, because for decades, the entire conversation around food quantities has been obsessed with portion sizes, and it's almost always tied to a cosmetic weight loss goal.
Only eat a portion of meat the size of a deck of cards, or a portion of rice the size of your fist to fit into those jeans.
But this book moves us miles past the simplistic idea of portion control. We are now talking about the science of food doses.
Exactly. Using molecular biology and vast epidemiological studies looking at the health outcomes of hundreds of thousands of people over decades, researchers are now determining the actual dose of a food required to trigger a biological disease-fighting benefit.
Just as a doctor calculates the exact milligram dosage of a statin or an antibiotic needed to be effective in the bloodstream, we can calculate the frequency and quantity of specific foods needed to achieve an anti-angiogenic or immune-boosting outcome.
But the book also heavily emphasizes common sense here, because human nature is to take a good thing to the extreme. If a little bit of something is good, we assume a truckload is better.
No single food is a magic bullet. If you decide that broccoli is your ultimate defense food and you eat 10 pounds of it a day to the exclusion of all else, you are going to severely disrupt your body's homeostasis. You'll probably destroy your thyroid in the process.
Balance and diversity are non-negotiable. Consuming anything in unnatural, extreme quantities is biologically detrimental. The goal is variety.
The 5 by 5 by 5 framework naturally encourages this by having you select different foods across different categories to support all 5 systems.
It's about a consistent, diverse influx of these biochemical signals, a gentle, persistent nudging of your cells, rather than a massive, overwhelming, toxic flood of just one compound.
So zooming out, what does this all mean for us? For the people trying to navigate our lives, feed our families, and stay healthy in a world that often feels highly processed and toxic?
For me, reflecting on the hundreds of pages of research in this book, the biggest takeaway is the profound paradigm shift regarding our own agency.
We are not passive actors in the theater of our own health. We don't have to just sit around terrified of our genetics or bad luck, waiting for the fortress walls to crumble so we can finally go to the doctor and beg for a pill.
We have agency. We have immense molecular power. Every single time we lift a fork to our mouths, we're making a medical decision.
It is a profoundly empowering message. We are shifting the locus of control back to the individual. We are not victims of biology. We are the architects of it.
In the epilogue of the book, Dr. Lane shows a brilliant quote from The Edge, the legendary guitarist from the band U2, who has surprisingly been deeply involved in the Angiogenesis Foundation's work.
The Edge observed that the old cliche, "we are what we eat," is slightly inaccurate. A much better, more scientifically accurate way to frame it is, "we are what we extract from our food."
We are what we extract from our food. I love that distinction, because we aren't just extracting calories for energy to burn, we are extracting information.
We are extracting complex chemical blueprints and polyphenol keys that literally tell our cells how to fight, how to heal, how to mobilize stem cells, and how to protect our DNA.
And Dr. Lee also shares a quote from Pope Francis, delivered at that Unite to Cure conference at the Vatican. The Pope said, "The true measure of progress is the ability to help every person."
That quote perfectly encapsulates the democratization of health that this entire scientific movement champions. You don't need access to a multi-million-dollar experimental medical facility to begin fortifying your health defenses.
The tools for survival and longevity aren't locked in a vault. They are in your local grocery store, at your neighborhood farmer's market, or even growing in a pot in your own kitchen window.
Which brings me to a direct challenge for you, the listener. Don't let this just be an interesting podcast that you listen to, say, "wow, that's cool," and then forget about tomorrow. Let the ideas in this book actively enhance your life, starting with your very next meal.
Look at your plate. Ask yourself, what is on there that is going to feed my Akkermansia bacteria? What is going to donate an electron to protect my DNA from oxidative rust?
Don't wait for a doctor's prescription to eat a tangerine or a handful of walnuts. Take control today.
It is entirely within your grasp. The science proves it.
If this conversation has sparked a light bulb for you, and I sincerely hope it has, I explicitly ask you to go out and purchase this book, Eat to Beat Disease: The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself, by William W. Lai, MD.
It is packed with comprehensive lists of over 200 foods, detailed charts, the full 5x5x5 framework daily worksheet, and even recipes to get you started on building your own fortress.
Furthermore, please engage with the author, Dr. William Lai, on social media. He is incredibly active, constantly sharing new research, new food studies, and updates on the power of food as medicine.
The science of nutritional biology is continually evolving at a breakneck pace, and staying connected with leading researchers like Dr. Lai is a fantastic way to keep your knowledge current and your daily habits inspired.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you found this information valuable, please follow, subscribe, and share the Playing Books podcast with anyone in your life who needs to hear this empowering message, which, frankly, is everyone you care about.
So think back to that doctor's office we talked about at the very beginning. You've gotten the bad news. You were scared.
You turn around at the door and ask, "Hey, doc, what can I eat to help myself?" If they give you that blank stare, you don't have to feel helpless or defeated anymore.
You can just smile,
Yeah.
walk out the door, and know exactly what to put on your grocery list to start fighting back from the inside out.
Keep your fortress strong, and we'll see you next time.